And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Germaine Simonson, founder and owner of Rocky Ridge Store. She is an awesome Native woman, and she does a lot for her community, and also is currently writing for council delegates from her area. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Germaine Simonson.
Yeah, Shay Germaine Simonson yin shia. Ado chishin shledot is a lana bashchin, Tedesh gizi dashinaldo kia ani dashache. Ado say haske back it has son zilpahajil wisha the hasne ade nasha. So I live here in the community of Hard Rock chapter. We're about 10, I'm located about 10 miles north of the chapter. And I've really, I've lived here pretty much all my life. I grew up here and I went to the local boarding school. The only years that I was not here was to go to high school in Flagstaff, as well as college in at NAU and ASU. So there are definitely those few years that I was off the reservation, but I came home every single weekend. And so I've back in 2015, I started, I get confused because I say 2014, but 2015. And I was really finally looking at all my paper documents, and I registered one of my businesses in 2014, but didn't actually start until 2015. So the transport business I began in 2015. I started actual, and the actual first job. And then the store I took over in 2018, the Rocky Ridge Gas and Market. And that's also the same time that I became involved with Change Labs, and I applied for their business incubator. So my training, I am not, didn't go to school for business, not formally. And my degree is in social work. And so business is I guess, and not I guess, but I know that probably majority of you here that are listening, as well as myself, we've all been involved in business of some sort. And so it's just that maybe our moms or our grandmas didn't really call it business, but it was, something they did to make a living. And so whether they sold jewelry, whether they sold steamed corn, or they bartered or traded. So those are, so I think I can say that probably every single one of us have been exposed to some kind of business activity, whether it was consistent or maybe it was seasonal, however way. So I really do believe that probably every one of us has some kind of business DNA in us. And so so that's my training. And that's that's the start of my story. And so we come back to the name of the topic of our workshop here today. And it's talking about building relationship. It's really about building relationships in your community. I forget what I was listening to a few days ago, but that person had mentioned that definitely we have our own, immediate families, and then we have our extended families, but our communities that we live in and that we conduct business in also becomes a community is a number of families, and we all become part of this big family. And so thinking about my community of Hard Rock, for sure, I have everyone here is related to one another in some way or another. It is a small community, and we can certainly trace, our lineage, and somewhere somebody is connected. And so, however, wherever your business is located, it may be on the Navajo reservation in your little community, or it might be, in one of the border or, one of the towns, whether it be Tuba City, Chinle, Kianta, or it might be in the city. And so what I've learned about doing business in my community, there definitely are, certainly there are positives to this as well as negatives. There definitely there is that aspect. And as a business owner, we have to navigate what to do with these situations. And so I definitely have a few examples that I will use and how we have to constantly remind ourselves, because it's easy to lose. It's easy to lose that perspective too, because as a business owner, you're dealing with so many things. I mean, you're dealing with payroll, you're dealing with tax situations, you're dealing with, ordering things, and you're dealing with loss of product, and that's just to name a handful, and there's definitely more. So we're just really busy, and I gave this description to the Navajo Nation president a couple of years ago when I was begging to get my business off so that I could remain in business, basically. And that's a whole nother story on its own. But so what I explained to him and described to him, because, I'm pretty certain he's never owned a business before, but I explained to him that running and operating and owning a business is, and I like to also compare it to our Navajo traditional ways, our livelihood, our ways of the way we live. And so I told him, in the Lagana world, in English, our young folks, they're always coming up with new terminology, right? They're coming up with new words, and the latest, one has been, coming back to the grind or whatever, and so using the word grind, and basically I said to him that is basically a real thing, something that very much is what we do in our traditional, Navajo everyday way of living. We grind. It's like grinding corn. We are sitting there with our tzedesh, and we have corn on the thing, and we're constantly grinding, right? It's constant every day. And there isn't any real 8 to 5 parameters for us. We're on the grind, right? And we're looking down, and we're trying to be focused, and we're, trying to put the right amount of weight on it, and we're trying to put the right amount of pressure, so that we, produce a quality product, right? So we're grinding. And every now and then we look up, and we, tend to all the other, external things, and the things, city, state, TPT, resale license, or Navajo Nation documents, whatever that we need to turn in. We then, take the moment off our grind, and we have to then go and check out all these other things again. And so in that respect, I, was explaining to him that, it is very difficult and doing business. And so we get caught up in those things. And some of those processes are extremely frustrating for me personally, especially dealing with the Navajo Nation Tax Commission, for me is extremely frustrating. So when we're under those kind of stresses, sometimes it's hard to maintain that, that concept, being here in the community and working with the people and serving the people and them being my customers. And so, you can lose sight, you can lose that perspective. It's a constant reminder. And so, everybody here, like I said, is related in one way or another. And it is very important to establish those connections. It's really important while you're in your community to see how one is related to you. And so oftentimes it starts with, who is your mom and dad? Who is your grandma and grandpa? And that's a good starting place, because then, they make that connection first, and they say, oh, I know your grandma, and she's one I greeted as my sister. So then you're my, however way, so those things are important, and to have those connections. And so greeting people in such a way is helpful, because when we have customers, they are definitely dealing with their own life issues and their own day-to-day struggles of whatever it is they're going through. And so in this store realm, so the transport, let me talk about the transport. So the transport is, we take, people who are eligible for access, services for transport, and we take them to, their nearest facility, or, whatever facility they are referred to. And so in dealing with my drivers, and working with my drivers and my office assistant, I encourage them to maintain professionalism. And that can, it takes a lot. It takes it's a skill to maintain professionalism. And so, we go through, early on, I gave them the training about also establishing, and a lot of my drivers are, a little bit older, so they already have those skills. And one of my sisters who started, actually my late uncle's daughter, she's one who I hired on initially. And she was amazing because her mom was very good at establishing those relationships. And early on, she taught her kids when she would go visit relatives. And this is why, and this is, this is really going to sound like, kind of a culture presentation. And I think this is the basis of, establishing a relationship. And that definitely is applicable in the business world. And so this woman was amazing. And she's passed on. And she, I called her my mom. And so what she did with her kids, and this is the reason that social activities in your community are important. So ceremonial activities, or if that's how you know it, any kind of singing that's happening, and as well as church events. I'm not excluding those kinds of, I'm not excluding that. I'm including, any kind of social activity. Kinalta, those are good social events. And so what she did and what I saw her do in those, environments and with her kids is she would say, and then there would be a teasing that would happen. And it was, very much, there's even, there's rules around how you tease as well. And so how do you tease a cousin? How do you tease a brother? How do you tease a grandpa, a grandma, and those, and so those settings is where you really could demonstrate, and you could exercise those things. And so then you also taught it, and you became that example to your children. So when you bring your children to these events and you say to them, saying that there's a certain person that you dance with, right? Your chait, hanale, and those are the ones that you can go and dance out to the drag out to the dance floor and dance with them for 50 cents or whatever, so then it was important because I always had relatives who would say to me, who would take me, and he would say, hey, this person, and so then, we would go and dance. I would tell him, and we dance. And so those are places that you definitely got to practice, and how to express your relationship and identify, how you're going to greet one another. And then in addition to that, there was also other things like teasing. How do you tease one another? Is it even a setting for teasing? How do we, if it's an in-law, how do you tease them? So those are things that were all learned in those, settings and those situations. And so definitely those personal relationships are really important. And as Marcia mentioned, I'm also running for a delegate for my region, Zifijin region, which I'll be covering 5 chapters. Those are skills definitely that I will be using and relying on as I get out there and make my way into these communities. So ag really can be utilized in just a wide spectrum. And I've seen it utilized also in the work that my sister Nicole Horseharder has done for the last 20 years and protecting the resources of Zifijin region. And so I've seen her year after year after year making the trips, and I've participated in many of those trips. Protests, I'll just use the word protests. And year after year, we made our journey from here into Zifijin, Hard Rock here. And we would, whether we went by, many years it was by horseback. And we, took a lot of the grassroots folks and the elders traveled out there and made presentation. It was constant education. But what I saw and what is very unique with the way that my sister Nicole did her work was addressing, and I guess as a young person, because this matter that we were dealing with was just so important to me. And it was, very urgent and it needed attention. But why aren't you listening? Like, why are you? And so it was easy to be extremely frustrated. It was easy to want to just, boo and heckle them and the delegates as they walk through and any kind of leader. But what I saw Nicole do year after year is just, she right off the bat identified how these delegates were related to her. And so she, shana, shiyaj, shanale. So it was always shitsile, however way, that connection, and she would just greet them the same every single year, even though there were some that were extremely, opposite and opposition to what, we were there for. It was the same, just year after year. It's just, greeting. And expressing, that tie, that person, that relation. And so that was one way, that's another area that I've seen it very effective. It takes a long time, definitely to see any kind of change. So persistence is really important. So going back to the transport and my sister, getting that training early on, she's younger than me. And I feel like her family really practiced more of that than my own. My family, my grandma was not one that did a lot of, was not very social, didn't go out to a lot of community activities. It was just kind of more through my mom's work with the social, with the senior services that during that time, I got out a little bit more, but I feel like my mom, she did minimal, introduction to folks and to say, well, this is how they're related to you. But really not at a real broad community level. But my sister, on the other hand, I really feel like got that training early on. So as a driver, as a young person, probably in her late 20s, she got out there early 30s, and she already knew how all the elder and all the patients that she was transporting, how they were related to her. And she would, get out there and she would greet them and she would tease with them. And a lot of them knew her mom, and what a great social person she was. And so she connected very easily. And that really helped me and the company in terms of getting customers. So it is, definitely who you hire. When you go to hire, your employees or your subcontractors and say, and there's could be a way to ask about that is what is your, what kind of interpersonal relationship skills do you have? What kind of, how do you connect with people? Or you could also make it very much a part of your business branding and who you are. And you could very much build your business around, we definitely work from a place of that is first and foremost, that is important. And so definitely you could build it in that way. And so, my sister got out there and clients loved her, the elders loved her, because she expressed that. And the really neat thing that she did also, she's great green thumb, and she had just the most amazing garden. And if you know zucchini and squash, they will reproduce like crazy. And my mom many years ago grew so much squash. We had zucchini for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I probably for two years after, I was not having squash because I just was so tired of it. But anyways, I still love squash well, I came back to liking it. But anyway, she grew a lot of squash and zucchini, and she would take a couple with her when she did a transport, and she would give, like just even one or two pieces of vegetable, and she would, gift it to the grandma and say, "Not shimasane," and that's how that was like that's gold. That was something that the people absolutely loved. And they said, "Oh, when is so-and-so, I want her to drive me. Hey, so, and she feeds me, and she, gives me a squash that is so tasty." And so, and that's how, different ways you can express, your relationship and your, how you appreciate folks. So with transport, that's really important. And my current staff, I feel like, do a really good job. Of course, we get really mean and negative customers. And again, just really encouraging my staff to maintain professionalism, just listen. And, if you can answer any questions, you can, try. If they just, are not being responsive in a positive way, just let them know, like you sound really angry right now, and I don't think we can have a good conversation. I'm sorry, but can you call me back, when we can have a real conversation? So, just things to say to folks. And if you can use shohei shema, listen to me for a minute. However way, that relationship can be expressed. So my staff, I feel like, do a really good job with that, with the transport side. On the store side, on the transport side, majority of the people I work with are much older in age. But on the store side, all of the people that work there are young. So when I mean young, when I say young, I'm talking like early 20s, very young. And there was, I believe I've just had one or two employees that were, fluent Navajo on that end. But everybody else is not fluent Navajo. But it's so again, there, just encouraging them. And when you work in a small community and you live here as well, there's definitely a lot of history. And also, you also have to know that not everybody likes you. Not everybody, likes you. It might have been something my great grandma did. Somebody I've never met. She might have done something that offended another family, and that family has been passed on from generation to generation. Oh, that's that family. They quit that. Next thing you know, it's you're being held to that. Whatever that event was, I don't know, 60 years ago, 80 years ago. And people hold, that against you. So those are things that just really are beyond your control. We don't, you have to know that you don't have the superpower to change people. You don't have the superpower to, no matter what you do, no matter how many good things you do, if somebody is dead set on not liking you, that's just it. That's just the way it is. And so that exists in business world, in communities here on Navajo. And so, it's not all peaches and cream. It's not all, rainbows and sunshine. People will find a reason not to like you. And so for me in the store, I've got, some feedback. And with the store, I'm not on site. I am an operator. I'm more an owner and not so much an operator. The first month or two of the business, I was there probably every single day for 7 days a week for 2 months until, I got the, because I've never owned a store before. So I didn't even know, and I've never worked in my youth, I've never worked retail ever anywhere. So I didn't know how to even, do the register. I didn't know anything. So it really took 2 months of, 10-hour days, and that I pretty much learned how to run the store. And so for those 2 months, definitely I was there. And then thereafter intermittently. And now, every now and then I'll go to the store just to check on things. And I feel like I'm doing, I don't know what my staff would say about me, but I feel like I've done a good job in training them on how to run the store, because they definitely can do it, and it's been happening. So even that becomes people can be critical of that. And so the way that differs, say, for example, we have a bunch of, like, say, Marathon, the gas station. We have Bashes, we have Pizza Edge, you have Subway, you have all these, chain businesses out on Navajo. And those are ones we see frequently, right? And so you see those stores, and people don't go there. People don't go there and say, I want to speak with the owner. Who's the owner? I want to see so-and-so. Half the time we don't know who the owner is. And we don't. But in a small community, and when you have a business here and they know, and everybody, a lot of people then know you are the business owner. And, the one time that I showed up at the store a couple months back, somebody came and said, I heard you, since you've taken over the business back however many years ago, they're like, we've never seen you. I've never seen you here. And it was almost like in a mean way, and this is a gentleman that would be my Yaj by clan. And he would say, and he said to me, I'd come here at least once a month, he said. And I've never seen you here ever since you took on the business. And so I was like, okay. And I just listened to him and I said, I'm rarely here these days because I have such amazing workers. But, at the start of the business, I said, I lived here. And so I said, and so that was that. And so people can be upset with you, because of that. Well, how come I'm not seeing you here? And so, those are things that, I talk to business associates, colleagues about, and how, how do I address this, and what should my response be? And so one of the things, that one of the solutions, one of the things that came to mind for me was, make, pop in frequently. Is there a way that I can schedule myself at least half a day, just sort of consistently, so that the people, can see me and know that I'm still, that I'm there. And so, I really, don't know the reasons that people absolutely want to see you there. So what I encourage the staff, the young folks to do is just, I tell them, and that was with our last staff gathering, I just encouraged them that, we're a small community. I don't get a lot of outside customers unless you're coming to the community for some reason, like you're coming in for the weekend because your distant relative Maggie is having a prayer service and you came all the way out from Chilchimbito and you're here, and then you heard there's a store down the road and you come by. That would be the only time that I get, sort of a customer base coming in, but every day is usually the same people. And so I just tell my staff that, you definitely, I encourage you to get to know every single person that comes in and establish that, tell them who you are. More than likely, they know who your grandma is and where you're coming from. So, and that helps with customer service, that helps with, addressing issues. If they're upset about something, they know, how you're related and hopefully, and that hopefully calms down the situation. Right. So those are different ways, that you definitely should think about, how you're going to run your business, and how will you use in that, in building, whatever relationship you want to build. How will you utilize that? And I think nowadays there's just so many great ways. Part of your staff or your employee, they could have these cool buttons that say, She Germaine, she, or something, even just a first client or something. And at least that's a conversation starter, right? Oh, so it's a good conversation starter. So I have Valerie, who I'm going to go to I'm looking at the time, Marcia. It's, I think we're due to end in probably another 10 minutes. But I'm going to go ahead and go to the stop right here. I'm going to look at the chats, and I just see Valerie here, just her comment. Yeah, it's Valerie. Thank you for your comment. Some people just don't vibe, and you have to be okay with that. Lesson is hard to learn. Yes. Sometimes you just don't vibe. And that happens. It's hard to accept because, you're trying to be, a good person. You're trying to just be chill with everybody, right? You're trying to be chill with folks, and sometimes, it doesn't always, work out. And that's just not only with customers, but that could be, business colleagues, people in the industry, other businesses. And so sometimes it just doesn't work out, right? But still, greet them with Yat Ishche and a good handshake if you're comfortable with that, and move along. Move along. But always just be the cordial, person, be the one that still extends, if anything, be the one that still extends the hand for a handshake, right? And acknowledge somebody and that they're there. And that's really, sometimes that's all we can do. I'm going to stop for a second. And I see Marcia's comment says 1 p.m. With the information I've shared at this point, are there any questions? Can I take a question or two? I'd like to take a question or two. And I know, almost everybody on here is working in the community in one capacity or another. And just, if you'd like to add to what I've said so far, and with just my experience, it may be you have another example or another scenario or situation.
I'd like just to add, this is Valerie.
Mm-hmm.
I work with the elder community, and I think that's why it's really important for, if you're Navajo, that's your superpower. And looking at it as your superpower and learning more about it. If you have family, because you're getting that firsthand teaching right there. But then it's hard too, like if you don't have family or somebody to teach you that, you need to go out and learn it. And
yes,
I would challenge you to just talk to an elder off the street. They love it. And I see the power in that, because like you're right, once you create that connection, shana, shitsile, or shama, those are really powerful words that you can get through the door, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like we're all related. 10 years on the reservation, I think I met 2 people that are not related to me.
Mm-hmm.
So that can just really help. So yeah, I think that's really important. And then now I feel like it's even more, because the teaching, I didn't realize it, the teaching is not that common among our young people. So I think that's why, to keep reinforcing, to say why, and know your clans and know the proper etiquette of where you're from, as a Dene, to introduce yourself, because that is such a powerful weapon to have. And even in business, I'm finding that as well. So thank you for that. Yeah, I really appreciate you bringing that up and having this class too for Change Labs, because we need to keep that, it's a superpower. I think that's what the thing too, letting our younger kids know that it is a superpower and we need to keep that connection. So, yeah.
Yes. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Valerie, for that comment and calling it a superpower, because it can be. And, when I was hearing you saying and expressing, the different relationships that we can express after knowing somebody's clan is shana, shaja, shama. And if you can even just think of that, the first word in that sh, so you're already like, that is just amazing, because this is just now coming to my head, is like shit, the word shit is, it's mine. And you're already pulling that person toward you, right? And you're saying sh, shaja, shema, so it's like you're already pulling that person, into your space, into your realm, and shana, and shut it, however way. And I really like that, and that word sh is you belong, and I really love that. So yes, if you have young ones, get into that habit of any gathering. And I know we're being careful with gatherings or not, people, but I'm seeing people gathering. So, and whether, however way your personal practice is today, whether you're participating in those gatherings or not, but in any case, when you're out gathering and you're, coming into family space, whatever activity, even a baby shower or something, if you've got your young ones with you, whether they're your kids or your little brothers and sisters or your nephews and nieces, or, get into that habit of getting to know people there and expressing and identifying how you're related. And then, and asking and instructing your little ones and saying, Din shade, so you have to tell them and coach them on what to say. Okay. And I have she's now 5 years old. My Tsui, by niece, and so she's 5 years old. But very early on, as soon as she could start to speak, we started to tell her within our immediate family, and so to this day, and she's just turned 6, actually. She just turned 6. Any immediate family member, she doesn't, refer to them by name. She says, Shiaj, Di Shiaj, Che, she'll call people her Che, her Yaj. And so that's how she now refers to people. Shamasana, she'll say Masana, or grandma, so she's already established and knows that, we're going to express relation in one of those ways. And so, we continue to teach her that, now in a bigger circle, and the circle just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, right? As we make our way into community. And then maybe, as the bigger gatherings come back, we can definitely take the opportunity, and we're in a big, gathering setting, and we can identify and pinpoint other relatives that are extended and say, okay, now this is another, here's a whole nother layer of relations, right? And so definitely I would encourage, and you might be doing it already, you might already be practicing those things, but it is very important. I really think that we need to continue practicing that. We need to continue to be that way to one another, whether, we're in business or politics or wherever we're at. We should continue to utilize and be realistic and know that most time I feel like it is embraced by the other party, and then sometimes it's not. There was a time I had a brother who worked in construction, and he worked in different cities, and of course, he would come upon other Navajo people, and he would, first of all, he would say, "Haishton," and because then that's how he would connect with them. And I remember a story where he shared, where he said there was a time that a woman was on site, a woman, a Navajo woman, and it turns out she's his grandma, Shamasana. And so he would say, "Shamasana," and he said she felt really embarrassed. And at some point, she even just said to him, "Don't call me that. I don't want you to refer to me as Shamasana." And that's her right, I don't know, maybe she has her own reasons for declining, or, saying, "I don't like the way you express relations to me." To each their own. But, and that's also another skill, again, recognizing if somebody doesn't want it, doesn't like it, then we have to stop, but in, I hope that I think it is a very positive thing. And we should to continue teaching our young ones. Raquel, definitely. So Raquel has something in chat. A lot of times in retail industry, customer frustration comes from personal situations, not necessarily the current interaction in the store. Exactly. Making a positive note on that person's day with your compassion could go a long, long way. Absolutely. I tell, my staff that don't take it personally. Do not take it personally. Somebody's going to come in and be mad because, our scanner isn't working right, and it's just one more thing that isn't working well for their day, like they've already started off on a bad note on the wrong side of the bed. And they come to our store and they're trying to purchase something, but our scanner isn't working because the barcode isn't clear or whatever, or maybe it's not in the system, and you're trying to scan there and it's not working and it keeps declining. And you're like, okay, what do I do? You're trying to figure out what to do next. And they're over here getting mad, like, come on now, can you hurry? I'm in a hurry here, And so, I tell them, definitely share with the staff that any negative, if there's negative interactions and people are mad at you, don't take it personally. It's because something definitely is happening in their own lives. Something that is happening in their day that is just, things aren't going right. And now one more thing isn't going right. So don't take it personally. But I also have boundaries, and I also encourage my staff to have boundaries, that you will not tolerate rude behavior. You will not, I don't want to subject you ever to somebody that is totally being disrespectful and, abusive in language and even in physical, in a physical way, that I will not tolerate. And I just tell my staff that you definitely, we need to have boundaries. And having a young staff is, I really appreciate that. And I like that because I suspect they won't be working for me forever at the store, but I hope that I can instill enough skills and enough, abilities and professional abilities, capabilities that they can use and carry on in their work life and their careers and going forward. So, that's something that I hope to, contribute to my workforce, and hopefully they've learned, certain things. Where in working within our communities. So, and I've spoke on this before with some Change Lab participants, is that with the store, it's been broken into twice by community members, right? And so I do let some things out on Facebook. Sometimes I just need to let it out, right? And it's heartbreaking because, all of it is difficult. So when that happens to you in your community, you also have to maintain again that level of professionalism, like major deep breaths. And okay, so when I posted the last time, and that was recent, within the past few months, that my store was broken into, my cash register screen was destroyed. That's a $1,200 fix. That's not cheap. And so that was probably the biggest, ticket item. And so, expressing that on Facebook, and I read, all the comments that came through, and our good friend, sister Navajo in the city shared my story, and I read all the posts on that as well. And people were mad. They were really mad, and they offered a lot of solutions, and definitely when you're a business owner, it's constant problem solving, right? How do I deal with this? How can I fix this? How do I address this? So, all of the comments and the feedback and the solutions that I received, there's a lot of things to consider. And so people were mad, like, this person needs to go to jail and make sure he pays you every cent back. And those all sound, and those in a perfect world would be great. It would be great if that happened, but it doesn't happen. And so, maybe another business owner, I don't know. So if you're not, really in that professional way of thinking, maybe you go on there and you start calling out the family, and you start to say, so-and-so did this, and they and you go on a rant, right? And you call them out and you do all that. Like I said, we're a small community. We're all, related in some way. And so it's like, okay, I can, say those things. But there's going to be ramifications. It's how do I deal with this and address it in a way that is professional, but also at the same time, like, I call the community to help me to make this, to keep the store safe, because the community needs it. And then also, the person breaking into the store is also my customer, a frequent customer, and their family they're my customers too. So how do we, navigate this? How do we take care of this? How do we do it in a positive, in the most positive way? We address all the issues. We fix the register. And this is where absolutely, when you run a business like a store and you have an actual store site, it is absolutely important to have a support system. It is absolutely important to have family, because there's no way, I'm just going to tell you, there's no way to go it alone. There's just no way. It's impossible. You need people. I constantly call on people for help, and I constantly call on, the folks that live. I don't live right near the store, so I call on people, and now, the people in the community in the area know that if something doesn't look right at the store, they message me and they say, okay, something is happening here, you might want to check this out. So I'm just letting you know there was a car parked in your, parking lot at this time. And I didn't want to stop because I was scared of them or, whatever. So it's really important. Because in a community setting, and especially if you have an actual storefront and then you have a business in community, the people in the community, you've got to find a way to gain their support so they can help, they're helping you. And that is just, I really appreciate that from my community members. I really do appreciate it. And so in times of break-in, yes, we do have security cameras, but when the person's face is covered and they have a hoodie on, it's impossible sometimes to see who that person is. So even though it's recorded, you might not see the person because they've done a good job in covering themselves up. And then one of the other solutions was, well, why don't you just call insurance and they'll take care of it. Well, yes, that could be quite possible, but guess what? It goes against me. It goes against me because one, it's already really hard to get commercial insurance on the Navajo Nation in a rural community, right? It's already hard. So like now I'm telling them, yeah, it's a high risk place and I just got robbed. And then so I have to then consider, okay, what were my losses? How much was that? And how much can I, what can I claim with insurance? And what can I get the money back? And what will I all need? What's all going to take? What will all be needed? Or do I just grit my teeth and just deal with it and just say, okay. And I call my insurance company and say to them, here's my situation. What will happen if I file a claim? And they tell me, all the things that could happen. And in the end, it just was not worth it. And so it's like, okay. And then the other one was put up a high chain link fence. And I'm like, do you know how much a chain link fence is? Especially one like you're going to build a fortress with, right? Put a wire up on top. And I'm like, oh gosh, yeah. Well, those are all great ideas, but they all cost money. It costs money. And so, so a lot of things to consider and people mean well, they're really concerned and they generally are, genuinely are upset for you because it sucks, when somebody steals something from you. It really does. But at the same time, you're also dealing with folks that have mental health concerns, and the thing that we have to think is there's no help around here. And in Hard Rock, we don't have those services readily available to deal with, to refer somebody to a mental health agency, to refer them for substance abuse treatment. Like, where are these facilities even? So, we deal with a lot of issues. And so, definitely, a lot to consider and a lot that we deal with in our business. So I'm just going down and reading some more chats here. I feel we love embrace from our older relatives. Yes. Older people can be bullies as well. Yes. And I'm going to smile. I'm going to smile on that one. Older people can be bullies. Absolutely. And I think I'm probably going to get the saying wrong, but I've heard it years back and I try to remember it from time to time. Elders are older people and, and we have respect, for them. We're taught to have respect for them. Respect your elders. But some elders can be really mean. and when it, working at the store, there was times that I was at the store, but I sat in the back room because I'm, trying to deal with receipts and, the books and trying to manage those things. And I'm sitting back there and I can't be bothered. Because when I'm out front, and I'm trying to work up front, people want to talk to me, right? And they want to talk to you and they want to just chat with you and visit with you. So you have to kind of put yourself in the back room if you need to do some work and not be bothered. So there are times definitely that I sat in the back and dealt with my paperwork, and I would hear the interactions up front with my young staff. And some of my young staff, absolutely have no, aren't, they're just trying to, they just are not comfortable, and they don't understand Navajo. At least, there was some that just absolutely could not understand any Navajo whatsoever. And so, when the elders come in, they get frustrated and they're trying to talk to this person, and the person's just like shaking their head like, I don't know, and they're trying to get their point across. And so I definitely heard, some of those interactions, and, and of course I come out and try to help my employees because I don't want them being bullied. And so the staff definitely are getting hands-on, hands-on. They're experiencing all of it. They're already experiencing, having to deal with difficult people, right? And how do we deal with the elder? So, we come back to training, and at the least some of the things that, I encourage the staff to learn is like the dollar amount, $5, $10, like a lot of the frequent questions that they are asked, the quish bahile, and just real, maybe just common questions that our elder population might have. So encouraging, the staff, what are your common questions that you get asked in Navajo? And you should recognize that word or two words. My daughter, who was 14 at the time, at the beginning of the pandemic, she wanted to work at the store at the age of 14. Now, my kids, unfortunately, I did not teach them to be fluent in the language. I started with my middle child. I was a young mother for my first one. So, I say sometimes I probably wasn't the best parent. My middle child, I definitely started out talking to him in Navajo and was fluent and up to about age of 3. And then he went to play with other, kids. And then he discovered TV, and that was it. The TV really, it was, if I were to redo things again, and if I were to go back to that time, I would have just tossed the TV, because that was the one I feel like really hampered my ability to really try to maintain that language fluency. But anyway, my 15-year-old though, at the time she's working, what she started to do is she would come back and she'd say, Mom, how do you say this? Mom, how do you say this? When a grandma says this, what are they asking? And how should I respond? What can I say? So we're starting to have those interactions. So definitely being in community and working, out here, you definitely have the opportunity to, get your young ones, get the young folks. If you have young folks working for you, get them started on those interactions, and then asking questions and helping them formulate responses and recognizing frequently used words. And so that was my daughter's, what she was able to do within the 2 years, up to age 16. She left me back in November or October. But she, within that time frame, she was able to really, learn the language, and really she forced herself to, to understand what was being said, and then also to formulate some responses. And so that is absolutely important. Another thing with running a small store, small retail, especially one with gas and propane and food, is as a small business owner, I do give a small credit. Now, when I do this, it's again, that is an extension of and it's an extension, and yes, it is risky. I understand that. But I'm also not giving people $1,000 credit. It's minimal. It's, when I established that dollar amount that I could give credit, I basically said, okay, how much am I willing to lose? How much am I willing to lose? So if the person isn't able to pay back, how much am I willing to lose? So that was a question I asked myself early on, and established those guidelines, and to say, okay, this is how much I'm willing to lose. And so that, having that credit for the people in a small community, because people really are having a hard time. And especially in a rural community where majority of the income is a fixed income, right? It's either SSI or food stamps or, something else. So it really can become, it's important to think about those things as far as payment. What will we, people are going to ask, can you give me credit? And what will our response be? And again, that's kind of an extension of as well, is to say, okay, well, I can give you a credit of this amount, and I this is a handshake that you're going to pay it back. So that could be an extension of, and again, that's a personal choice, definitely up to each and every one of you. And if you decide not to do it, I mean, that's perfectly understandable as well. Because you might be in a position, and you might be in a business that you just absolutely cannot lose any money, because you have a very slim profit margin of some sort. So
Germaine, I had a question for you. You keep saying Hard Rock. Are you the person that took over that store way out there behind the hill in the middle of nowhere? Is that the store that you're talking about? Past Pinyon, or I'm thinking of two places. That's why I was like, holy cow, I know there's a store way out there, just out of nowhere, and there was a paved road, the senior center, and like that back road. Mm-hmm. You can take that extension from there, but I know it's also a dirt road that way.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a Red Mesa. It was a trading post, I believe.
In Hard Rock. So I'm in Hard Rock. We're between Chinle and Tuba City. We're right in between.
Oh, okay.
And yes, it is a very, it's a rural location, very much in the middle of the community. Yes. So I don't have I'm not on a major highway where I get traffic, other traffic. So anybody who comes to the store is very much is somebody who lives in the community. The only time I get, again, a different customer base is say for weekends, or if there's some activity, say like a graduation. And that's why, for me, surviving the pandemic was absolutely, it was difficult, because I rely, so it can be slow from Monday through Friday, right? Like it can be slow because I'm only getting local folks in. But the weekends can be game changer. A year before the pandemic, a community member had a dot ceremony right across from the store. And so for that whole weekend, oh my God, like if I could bring in that kind of income. And if I could have that kind of sales every single day, I would be so amazing. But that weekend, I had customers like every single 4 or 5 minutes, they were coming in. And a lot of times they were coming in to use my restroom, but they came in and bought a snack or two, slush, because it was so hot. And so that was really helpful. So in small rural communities, you're very much dependent on that extra customer base that comes in. And if there's like a road construction down the road, it brings in those people, and if there's a church camp meeting, up the road, it brings in those people. I have people coming from Tuba City that are saying, yeah, there's a church camp meeting happening here and I'm coming and I need to come and buy some snacks. Oh, great. Okay. So those, that extra, those people on weekends matter. And so, yes, you all know through the pandemic, there were no gatherings, there were no activities, there were no ceremonies. So it was really hard to get that extra customer coming in. So any more questions, because we only have 6 minutes left. Yes, good to have community buy-in and support. Absolutely. It's important. But also you can still, I still get a few people who are, just don't, whether they don't like me personally, whatever it is, or they're just, they don't like the nacho cheese for some reason. It could be anything. You're still going to get a few people that are going to tell you you're not doing a good job. And okay. And that's okay.
I don't see any more questions.
Okay.
I'd just like to make a few announcements. I'd like to thank you for your time and also everyone that attended this session. Our next session is going to be with Mike Sixkiller. He's a local to the Tuba City area. He is, I believe, the Western Navajo Agency Fair Coordinator for the Tuba City area, Western Agency, I guess. He will be our speaker on June 22nd. And you can also register for this event, nativestartup.org/events. Have a good rest of the week, everyone. And thank you for coming and attending and listening to Germaine. And Germaine, thank you for everything, for all of your wisdom and information that you provided today.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for the opportunity. Have a good day, everyone.